Welcome back to Upside Down Data. Let's talk about Litecoin. So you might have seen that Litecoin has been absolutely ripping recently. Ever since the election, it is up about 50%. And this is notable because Litecoin, if you are not aware, has not done all that much ever since 2017. So Litecoin is an asset that came into existence all the way back in 2013. It was meant to be a faster and cheaper alternative to Bitcoin. Has a lot of similarities with Bitcoin. It's proof of work. It has halvings, basically the rate at which new supply is issued halves every 4 years like Bitcoin, so on and so forth. It was kind of meant to be the digital silver to Bitcoin's digital gold. But as you can see, ever since that first big cycle where it did have from bottom to top a very, very respectable 27,000% return, ever since that cycle, it's really not done anything very impressive. It only just barely set a new all-time high in 2021 relative to the high it put in back in 2017. And it's really just more or less gone sideways ever since this 2017 cycle. So why are we talking about Litecoin? What is going on? Why is it pumping recently like this? And is there any hope that it could be breaking out of this rather depressing price action history that has shown ever since 2017? Well, one of the things that's been interesting that's been a development with Litecoin is that it's trying to rebrand itself as a meme coin. So if you've been over on X following the Litecoin account, you'll notice that actually they very much changed their messaging. And it's turned into basically just a meme posting type of account. And basically embracing the fact that Litecoin has been so useless for so long that's effectively a meme in the crypto space. And basically trying to capture all of that hype that's been happening with memes, why not? Just go ahead and turn Litecoin into a meme. Maybe that'll help price action even more. Now, at least in the short term, it seems to be working. And Litecoin is ripping along with a lot of the other kind of so-called dinosaur coins, a lot of the older coins. And I think it's just kind of a funny change. And it's one of those things where it's dumb enough to work. One of the things you have to learn about crypto is that nothing is too stupid. And in fact, oftentimes the dumber it is, the more that it will pump. And so with this change, I actually think this is probably more likely to be positive for Litecoin than definitely if they just stuck with the boring old, what they were saying before, where really it was out of touch with the realities of modern day crypto. So I want to talk a little bit more then about what some of our models are seeing with Litecoin, how much further could this go, and also look at some on-chain data. So I want to talk about risk as it relates to Litecoin. So this is our long-term upside downside potential indicator, or UDPI. So high values mean high risk, low values mean low risk. And this cares about moves that play out over months to multiple months, so longer in its time horizon. And so if you've been following the channel, you're very familiar with this model. And you see it's done a good job with Litecoin, where even during this long range where it didn't really go and set in massive new all-time highs, it would still tell you when was a really good time to be buying Litecoin and when was a really good time to be selling. Now, notably with Litecoin, except for this cycle over here, its risk has not gotten all the way to the top of the scale. And the way that you can interpret that is that Litecoin, from the model's perspective, had more upside potential it could have realized in this cycle. It just didn't. And that's probably more of a mark against Litecoin, the fact that it probably could have continued running, but it's just not attractive enough of an asset to really get a lot of people to dump into it, or at least at the time. And then, of course, going into this bear market, likewise, we saw multiple really good acquisition periods have happened, and anyone who bought at those periods is actually doing fairly well, is now in profit. And we're still fairly low on the risk model. Now, if we do continue to see Litecoin pumping into a potential alt season, I do think it's reasonable to expect that we're not really targeting the very top of the scale necessarily in terms of where it might go. It's probably going to be somewhere like last cycle where it might see its topping out point on the risk scale. Unless it is successful at rebranding itself as a meme, then maybe it can go a lot higher. And something to note here is that if you look at the current market cap of Litecoin, so here I am over on CoinGecko, it's currently number 24, 7.2 billion, so not a small market cap asset by any means. But you'll notice that Pepe is higher at 8.8 billion, Shiba Inu is up at 14.5, and Dogecoin is at a whopping 54 billion. So memes can get massive. That is one thing to note. So if Litecoin is successful at making people change how they see it, turning itself into a meme and then catching a lot of upside because of that, then it's not to say that this can't prevent it from pumping to a reasonable degree. though I would be very surprised if it even gets to the level of Shiba Inu, let alone something like Dogecoin. But time will, of course, tell. So that's where, in theory, the entirety of this scale could be in play this cycle, but I would be surprised. I think probably somewhere around 3 out of the maximum of 5 here is where we'd be targeting on the long-term UDPI if we see a big run on Litecoin. And then that will probably be a pretty diagnostic signal. When Litecoin has gotten to these really high risk levels in the past, generally speaking, taking profits and moving to another asset that hasn't run yet has been the smart move. Suspect that would be the case here as well. Now, I also want to talk about some on-chain data as it relates to Litecoin. So here what we're looking at is the total realized price for Litecoin. So realized price is basically the average cost basis on the network. So all Litecoin that exists in Litecoin wallets, it's the average price at which they were bought. That's basically what realized price is. Now, something that's notable with Litecoin as it relates to the realized price is once you clearly break above it, then historically speaking, you generally have at least some amount of upside that you experience. Occasionally, you'll kind of peak above it, get rejected off of it, but oftentimes when you break clearly above it, especially in the parabolic phase of a bull market, quite a bit of nice upside has followed. So notably, now that we're in this place where after the election with Trump's victory and the easing of regulatory pressure and basically the much better environment for altcoins generally, altcoin has broken above its realized price. It's very possible we'll see something explosive again. Now, I don't think it's going to be like this cycle explosive, but something like this cycle, or even just kind of up to one of these intermediate peaks, certainly is possible for Litecoin here. Now, does this mean that Litecoin is going to outperform a bunch of other assets? No, I think there are going to be a lot of other assets that outperform Litecoin. But also, I think there might be assets that Litecoin outperforms, ironically enough. If it is successful at changing the way that people think about it, then it might actually do much better than people think. It might surprise people. And this is where I go back to this idea that nothing is ever too dumb in crypto. It might sound insane and stupid that something like Litecoin that's been around forever could successfully rebrand itself as a meme and really benefit from that and go on some big crazy run. That sounds stupid. That sounds like something you should just ignore and move on. But if you've been in crypto long enough, you know that stupid things often work. And so that's why I'm not discounting this yet. So Litecoin, it's at fairly low risk right now. It has more room to run, even if it can't get to the top of the scale. We're seeing this signal where it's passing above the realized price, where in these alt seasons in the past, some explosive moves have followed. I think it's one to watch. Now, obviously, I'm not turning into some kind of Litecoin maxi who thinks it's going to go crazy and change the world. But I do think that these types of things are worth watching. They happen, and it's easy to dismiss them, but oftentimes when you do that, you just get left behind and the thing goes crazy. So none of this is financial advice. You should make your own opinions, do what you think is best. But I thought this was an interesting development for Litecoin, an asset that I and many others had left for dead, given how not impressive it's been for so long. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to play out. I'll continue watching the data, and then once it seems like it's getting overheated, risk is high, that's when I'll be pulling the plug and not thinking it's going to probably go too much further in the cycle, but we are not at that point yet. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us over on X. A lot of updates from our models and more over there. You can go to our website, partydigital.io, to see live data from our models and more.